Still, Ryan Smith voiced growing concern over how rapidly things are turning against Diddy. Each new testimony seems to worsen his chances of avoiding conviction. Smith suggested that while a jury might still opt for a compromise, convicting on lesser counts, the prosecution's methodical strategy is clearly pushing toward a major win.
The scuttlebutt in your profession about how it's looking for Diddy.
Getting worse and worse by the day. Getting worse and worse by the day. And every bit of testimony I hear, it's getting harder and harder for him to get off. I think his chances are well below 50% of beating these charges. And you and I talked about this last week. Perhaps there is a way this jury looks at this, doesn't believe certain witnesses, and does what we call a compromise verdict. We're going to convict on some things that are lesser charges and maybe not on racketeering. That's perhaps something that might happen here. But I got to tell you, Stephen A., what I'm seeing here is this racketeering case being built very well. That's the main part of this case.
Smith emphasized how the prosecution is structuring its racketeering argument. Witnesses are describing not just acts of violence committed by Diddy himself, but how he allegedly manipulated others into carrying out his will. In some cases, he is said to have made direct threats like "I brought a gun" or "tell Kid Cudi to stay quiet." This mirrors what's often seen in organized crime trials, where the ringleader gives orders but rarely acts alone. Smith said a jury with knowledge of mob cases could easily see the comparison.
Witnesses coming up and talking about he did this violence, he did that violence. We expected that. What I think is really interesting to me is how these witnesses are testifying that he would use that. I'm going to say this about you if you don't do this. I brought a gun, you're coming with me. You're going to do this with Kid Cudi. You're then going to talk to him and tell him not to talk to police. This is exactly what people say happens in RICO cases. And you got a jury who might be looking at it like, well, RICO cases, I think of mob cases. I think people have to understand, what do you think happens in those cases? It's a mob boss allegedly telling somebody else to do this, do that. I'm not getting my hands dirty. You're going to do all these things and I'm directing.
On the other hand,
on day 13 of the criminal trial involving Sean Diddy Combs, Mia once again took the witness stand and gave deeply detailed testimony about her past encounters with the music mogul. She claimed that the first time Diddy forcibly kissed her was during his 40th birthday celebration in 2009. A year later, in 2010, she said he raped her at his residence in Los Angeles. Mia also reviewed a series of emails spanning from 2009 to 2017 where she expressed her fear of Combs. In one of those emails, she labeled him a psycho and said he was unbelievably cruel, noting he went crazy on me. She said she lived in ongoing fear of angering him, knowing he could erupt without any warning.
Of the criminal trial of Sean Combs. This morning, we had more testimony from Mia. Mia said on the stand that Mr. Combs first forcibly kissed her in 2009 at his 40th birthday party, and then in 2010, he raped her at his Los Angeles home. She went through a bunch of emails about her time during 2009 to 2017, detailing the terror and fright that she had towards Mr. Combs. There was one message that she called him, quote, psycho, and said that he's so mean, quote, he went crazy on me. She said that she was terrified to make him mad, and at any given time, he could go into a rage.
During cross-examination, Combs' defense lawyer, Brian Steele, presented over 10 of Mia's previous Instagram posts, where she publicly appeared to praise him, seemingly trying to question her credibility. The courtroom paid close attention, as Steele highlighted the inconsistency between her online praise and her emotional testimony in court. Steele is currently only halfway through his cross-examination, and the prosecution is expected to follow up with redirect questioning to respond to the defense's claims.
Enterprise.
Allegedly telling somebody else to do this, do that. I'm not getting my hands dirty. You're going to do all these things and I'm directing. And Stephen A., there's another part of this that I think might resonate with this jury that I think we have to keep our eye on. These are women, in particular young women, coming forward talking about the forced labor, the violence perpetrated on them, the ways in which they were forced to do things at gunpoint, if you believe Capricorn Clark, if you talk about what Capricorn Clark talked about, the things that he would say about them. Will jurors look at this and say, he's treating women like this. I mean, when we think about a mob case, we think different men trying to prove things to other men. I wonder if there will be a dynamic of this, of these young women, in Mia's case, somebody in their 20s trying to work in the music business and all of a sudden realizing they're in these situations.
Ryan Smith also touched on the emotional weight of the testimonies, especially from young women who shared stories of forced labor, threats, and psychological abuse. He suggested that jurors could be deeply affected by accounts like Mia's, who was in her 20s and simply aiming to grow her career in music. These statements not only outline criminal actions, but also expose the degrading treatment of women, potentially shaping the jury's overall view of Diddy's motives and behavior.
An impact on the defense, other than they too have to kind of go with what's in that courtroom. They're bound by in that courtroom, the judge is what matters. The jury is what matters. Outside actors do not matter. So for them, they got to focus on that. Now, could they use that later? If Diddy is convicted, they're trying to appeal. If there's rumblings about that, maybe that's a different discussion. But what I really worry about, Stephen A., is what you just said. A juror somehow finding out about this. You know,
Ryan Smith later addressed concerns about outside influence affecting the case, stating that public opinion or media speculation isn't likely to impact the legal strategy of the defense, which is confined to what's happening inside the courtroom. He explained that what truly matters are the judge and jury, not outside noise. While he admitted that public discourse might be referenced during an appeal if Diddy is convicted, Smith emphasized that, for now, the defense must remain focused strictly on courtroom evidence and testimony.
I'm going to say this, as a person who's practiced law for decades, the courts are we don't realize how precious this institution is. We don't realize how amazing it is that we live in a society where people can be on trial and jurors can sit there and they can actually not read anything, see anything, and take the process so seriously that nothing outside affects them. It makes me sad that someone on the outside would say something, maybe you're not realizing how that could taint somebody and possibly taint this process. Because I got to say, Stephen A., and this is not me just saying this is the greatest process in the world. And I know a lot of people feel like courts go against us, go against black folks. I understand that part of it. I'm just saying, like, the integrity of the court system is so vital to making these cases in any way fair. And if we start having people say things on the outside that could perhaps get to a juror, man, that's disappointing because that's a slippery.
Smith concluded by underlining the importance of protecting the integrity of the justice system. He said it's troubling when outside voices threaten to interfere with a jury's impartiality. He added that in the U.S. legal system, it's rare but valuable that jurors are expected to stay focused and avoid distractions. If that impartiality starts to slip, it could threaten the fairness of the whole trial. That's a slippery slope we can't afford to go down, Smith warned, stressing how vital a clean, unbiased courtroom is to getting real justice.